As a landscape photographer, do I have any value in today's world of photography? This is a question I've been asking myself recently. It's something that I've been thinking about a lot, and it's what I want to discuss in this video. Hello everyone, I hope you're doing really well, and thank you so much for choosing to watch this video. I do hope that you find it interesting. So it's 2022, and as a landscape photographer, I think it's very fair, reasonable, and very sensible for me to ask the question of myself, as a landscape photographer in today's world of photography, do I have any importance, any worth, any value? Is it important what I do anymore? And I think this is a very fair question to ask myself, and I indeed have been asking myself this a fair bit recently. So before I get into this topic, I think it's important that I just give a baseline overview of what a landscape photographer would traditionally do, or at least what I do. So I obviously travel around. For myself, it's purely in Scotland and at the moment, and I take landscape photography images. So I shoot landscapes. It can be much larger vistas, it can be smaller scenes, it can be woodlands, countryside, seascapes, up in the mountains, you name it. I love taking photographs of the landscape. And I love to share my work. I do that in various ways through social media, my website. I make YouTube videos, obviously, as you're watching one now. And my main passion is that I love to sell prints of my work. So I love to print my images. I think it's the best way to view images, and I love to sell those prints because it gives me great satisfaction when someone has my work displayed in their home or office or wherever. In addition to this, I offer landscape photography tuition, so I run workshops and I try to help people with their photography. And I also try to show them locations that I visit in areas that I think are great for landscape photography. In addition to that, there's various other things. That's the core areas that I personally concentrate on. Sometimes I'm asked to take photographs for a person or company, and they'll use that photograph for whatever they have in mind. Sometimes I'll produce calendars and so on. There's various things that I'll do, but those are the main areas which I cover as a landscape photographer. I view myself as a traditional landscape photographer. I shoot digital, but the manner in which I do my landscape photography, my approach to it, is very similar or nigh on identical, I would suspect, to people who did photography, landscape photography 30 years ago. But I have to be very observant and aware of how the world has changed. The world of photography has definitely changed. I think probably almost 100% of people now have a camera of some description. Of course, in mobile phones, people are taking photographs regular using their mobile phones. A lot more people these days have a dedicated camera of some description, and everyone, it seems, is taking photographs. There are so many photographs shared daily. I shudder to think at the amount of photographs which are uploaded to the internet each day. And whenever I go on social media, I'm having so many photographs thrown at my face, so to speak. Not in a nasty manner, of course, but I'm just seeing photographs all the time. I see them in television adverts. If I browse the internet, I'm seeing photographs. And it just seems that photography is so commonplace these days. It is just happening in everyone's world almost. And of course, lots of people are just taking pictures of what they're having for breakfast, but also pictures of scenery and what I would call landscape photography style images. I, of course, love taking photographs. I get great pleasure from it, and I would encourage anyone to take photographs if they think it's something they enjoy. But what I fear is happening today is a consequence of so many people having cameras and so many people taking images and uploading them to the internet, social media, and various apps and so on, various websites. I think that the work of the traditional landscape photographer, who goes about things in a very different, more methodical, a more considered approach, I think that type of work is somehow being lost now in the deep, vast ocean of images that are being created every day across the world. As well as more people taking more photographs than ever, I also think, generally speaking, people are travelling more than ever, be it across their own country or to neighbouring countries or across the world. I think people are generally travelling and taking photographs more than ever, and this sort of lifestyle is something that is being encouraged, I believe, on the internet now. There's many people speak of the virtues of travelling and taking photographs, and the people that are doing so are of course sharing their photographs on the internet. The result of this is that you can pretty much think of any place, have a look on the internet, have a look on Instagram or other apps, search for this place, and you're going to see photographs of it. Of course, not every inch of the world has been photographed, perhaps not yet, it may well be soon, but you can generally find photographs of anywhere. But if we go back a good few years before the internet and Instagram, etc. were so popular, this wasn't the case, and I think this is going back to a time when the work of the landscape photographer, the traditional landscape photographer, was perhaps more important then than it would seem to be now. But I would argue that it is still very important, and we'll get on to that later in the video. Getting back to the beginning of this video and what I was speaking about then, genuinely for the last 2 months or so, I've been putting a lot of thought into the question, do I have any value anymore as a landscape photographer in the bigger world of photography? I simply think that photography has become much more accessible to many people, and that is a fantastic good thing, that's a positive thing. But it does mean that I have to ask myself the question, does my work mean anything anymore? And is it still important for me to be a landscape photographer? It's something I'm deeply passionate about, landscape photography, and it's something that I love doing. But simply the question is, do my images, or indeed the images of other landscape photographers, mean as much now as perhaps they would have done, say, 30 years ago? And I think it's a very interesting topic and one we need to think about. And I'd like to tell a little story which happened to me the other week. I was visiting a coastal area for the first time, and I was hoping to get some good photographs on that day, but being a landscape photographer, I was also scouting the area, and I was willing to return if necessary. And that's part of being a landscape photographer. Perhaps I wouldn't get the conditions that I wanted on that day, I wouldn't get the light, or I felt I would want to return at a different time of year for whatever the reason. So I was going about my business, having a look at the location, and I was spending a lot of time going around looking for potential compositions. I actually made some notes as well, and I did take some photographs. I got one that I'm really pleased with, but I've also taken what I would call a few prototype images of scenes that I want to return to, and I'll go back there a few times until I'm very happy with the images that I can finally create. But as I was doing this, a car with 3 people in it arrived. They came out with phones and they were just snapping shots of the landscape. They were snapping shots of themselves within the landscape, and they were snapping images of what they were having to eat at the beach and so on. And I could overhear some of their discussion. They were saying it quite loudly. They weren't hiding what they were doing or saying, but they were online on their phones. They were uploading them to Instagram. And in the space of perhaps, I think maybe 15 minutes, they came and left. And I think they must have uploaded perhaps, I don't know, between them, possibly 12 images or so of the area, of them in the area, of what they were having for lunch and so on. But anyway, there's now a few photographs of that location up on the internet. there's probably hundreds of other ones as well, but they were all just taken and uploaded within the space of 20 minutes. And this really got me thinking. I almost asked myself, what am I doing here? Because I was there for hours, and I'm going to go back there probably multiple times. And in the end, I might only get 1 or 2 images that I'm really happy with. But these people are delighted with their 20 minutes work. I don't know what they're doing. A lot of people are obviously using Instagram to perhaps try and get sponsorships and other things and making a living from it, but they definitely had a very specific purpose in mind. And let me be clear, I've nothing against people who do this, absolutely nothing. There's nothing wrong with it. They're enjoying their photography, perhaps they're making a living from it, and I'm no better than them. I definitely want to stress that. It's not a case of me thinking I can take better photographs or anything, but it just got me thinking, does the traditional landscape photographer have a purpose anymore when it seems that that type of quickly consumable photographic content is what the world is thriving on and looking for and enjoying these days? It's all about quickly consuming image after image, scrolling through them, and to me it's almost became like the fast food market. I see lots of adverts telling me I can now order and receive food quicker than ever, and it's almost like photography and landscape photography in that package has become exactly the same. We're now taking, sharing and consuming more photographs than ever. And just where does my own work and other landscape photographers' work end up in this new world? It's clear to me that the world of photography and the smaller world of landscape photography definitely has changed dramatically. I think we're all, or 99% of us now, are able to take photographs, and good photographs at that. Even using our mobile phones, these take very nice quality images. They're not suitable for all purposes, of course, but they take nice images. The software and AI in these phones is incredible. It can mimic effects such as depth of field that we would use a traditional camera and its settings for. They can do amazing editing. There's software available on computers which can edit our photographs for us. They can replace skies and so on. That's definitely a whole topic for another video. But there's just so much going on. The world of photography has definitely changed. And I also find it very interesting and almost ironic that platforms such as, say, Instagram and other photo sharing platforms, and even YouTube, which is a video platform but photographers use it, and we share how we take our images, and we share our images on YouTube as well. But all these platforms, I believe, reward people who are uploading content pretty much as is possible, as often as is possible. So it's rewarding people who upload content almost daily. And to me, as a traditional landscape photographer, it's so ironic because that is completely against how landscape photography works. It's much more slow and methodical, and of course we react very quickly to amazing light if we're in the right place at the right time. But often for me, landscape photography is a longer, more drawn out, enjoyable process, and it may take me years to finally capture the perfect version of a scene which I see today. So getting back to my question, which I've been asking myself for the last couple of months, as a landscape photographer, do I have any worth in today's world of photography? And I've seriously been thinking about this a lot. And ultimately, there's two things which make me feel that I do. The first is I've looked deep within myself and I've got this inbuilt love and passion for landscape photography. It's something that I never want to stop doing, and I think that is very important, and that fact alone means that what I'm doing is important to me and hopefully to others as well. But I've also been looking back. I have to look back to the traditional landscape photographer. There's many of them which I admired, and I liked how they went about their business many years ago, before there was Instagram and other social media, and the internet wasn't as possible, and so many people didn't have cameras on their mobile phones. I think there's still a place in today's world for that traditional landscape photographer. So what does a traditional landscape photographer do back then, or what did they do back then that is still so important now? And for me, I think people who do this for a living, who have practiced the art of landscape photography for years, can capture a place in a better manner than anyone else. We're passionate about it, we've probably got a love for the landscape, and we've got a vision, and we may get that on our first visit to a location, but we may return for many repeated visits to get that final image that we are proud of. And I think probably when it comes to looking at photographs from across the world, the versions that true landscape photographers take are probably the most pleasing to most people if a survey was done. And I think that's very important. If somewhere means something to you and you want a beautiful photograph to live on your, say, your living room wall for the rest of your life, I don't think anyone can do that better than a landscape photographer. We're going to have hopefully the eye for composition. We're going to put in that effort. We're going to print the image on high quality papers. We're maybe going to try it across a number of papers, and we're going to refine that print until we are really proud of it and we want to put our name on it and we're happy to sell it. So I really do think we have a purpose for that reason alone. And to have some really nice artwork on your wall is something very special, and you can enjoy it for years to come. It's going to stay looking as good as on day one as it will years down the line. And I think that's something really important. And only people who do this for a living or are extremely passionate about it will produce that end result that's very worthy of a place on your wall. The other thing is that online these days you can find photography tuition everywhere. There's so many articles and websites about it. There's little tips and tricks on social media apps. And of course, people like myself are using YouTube, and there's so many instructional videos out there. And that makes me wonder, and I was asking myself, are my workshops worth anything to anyone anymore? And again, looking back to the traditional landscape photographers who have been doing it for a long time, I really do think the answer is yes. Of course you can learn so much on the internet now. It seems there's a video or an article about anything that you can think of. But I still think that human interaction with an experienced landscape photographer is really, really important and helpful. These people are going to have fantastic knowledge of the areas that they go in workshops, and they're going to have years and years of experience being out in all sorts of places in all weathers, knowing how to get the best out of a location, and their knowledge of light and so on, and little, I'd like to call them tips and tricks, but I don't really think it's important. It's their little pieces of invaluable knowledge. Sometimes when you're with someone in a workshop, that's when you're going to learn things that change your photography forever. So I think for people who want to improve, going on workshops, be it with myself or someone that they really trust and admire the work of, I really think it is important, and there's still a real reason for these people who exist. The other thing is that I'm sure many people who are not photographers have a strong desire to protect the landscape and wildlife and so on. But I do notice more than any other type of photographer, the true landscape photographers are very passionate and respectful about the landscapes that they visit. And I think we try from time to time to put across a message that we need to look after these special places. And taking it aside everything else that we do, if we're trying to encourage that message that we need to look after the landscapes, I think that in itself is very important as well. Some landscape photographers will also sell, of course, things such as books and calendars and so on. And again, I definitely think these things are very important in today's world. To have something physical hanging on your wall, be it a print or a calendar, and just to have that nice picture that you pass by daily or look at when you're checking the date and what's on your calendar for this week, I think that is really important in today's digital world. And I think photography books are fantastic as well. It's so nice just to put our computers and tablets to the side, put our phones away, touch a physical book, and look through the work of a fantastic landscape photographer. Look at their images, read the stories of how the images were captured, and I really do think these things are very important in today's digital world. Ultimately, after having thought a lot about my landscape photography, and landscape photography in general, I must say, over the last couple of months, I've came to the conclusion that there is definitely a place for the traditional landscape photographer in today's changed modern world of photography. I think we need to embrace and utilize, where appropriate, social media, things like YouTube and so on. But I think it's important that we never lose those core values and traditions that landscape photographers would have had, say, 20, 30 years ago. I just think we need to use these new technologies where appropriate, but the traditional landscape photographer, I really do believe he's as important today as he ever was, if not more so. So for me, this has been a really interesting topic to think about over the last few weeks, and definitely been interesting for me to make a video on. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Let me know in the comments section below what you think about landscape photographers as they are today, those who do it full time. Are we still important, or has the world of photography changed so much that we're just simply not as relevant? I know my views, but I'd love to hear your opinions as well. For me personally, if you're interested in any of my work and want to buy any of my prints, I do have those available on my website, so please feel free to check that out if you're inclined to do so. And if you've enjoyed the video, do consider giving it a like rating, give it the thumbs up. And if you're not yet subscribed to my channel, do consider subscribing. But for now, thank you so much for watching. As I said at the beginning of the video, I hope you found it interesting and thought-provoking, and hopefully I'll see you in my next one.